Good morning, Honorable Minister. Good morning, colleagues. We are here for this briefing of today, whereby the Minister is going to be taking us through the progress in terms of the implementation of the Energy Action Plan that was launched last year in July by the President. And the Minister will also be taking us the progress, not only of the current, but the annual progress, given the fact that we have reached a year milestone. He will also be taking us through a program whereby we are trying to encourage the electricity users to use electricity responsible as well. So we'll be having that particular launch of that program today as well. Once more, my name is Nomonde Mnugwa, the Acting Director General of the Department of Government Communication and Information System. Colleagues, you are most welcome. Let us welcome to the podium the Minister of Electricity, Dr. Ramogopa, who's going to be taking us through. Minister, over to you.
Thank you very much, Sis Nomonde, and just to also thank members of the media for making time to join us this morning, and also to make it possible that you use your various platforms to share with the South African public the work that we are doing in trying to resolve the single biggest existential problem that is confronting us, and that is of the energy deficit in the country. I will be reflecting today a bit more on the strides that we have made over the past 12 months. As all of you might know, is that July marked the first anniversary of the Energy Action Plan, which was unveiled by President Ramaphosa in July of 2022. So we thought that as part of just ensuring that we embed transparency, accountability in the work that we are doing, we are going to give you a balance sheet of the work that we have done over the past 12 months. Of course, in some areas, there's significant and commendable strides. In other areas, we are still lagging behind the targets that we had set for ourselves, but we will indicate the work that we're doing to ensure that we recover on those areas of underperformance. And before I do that, I'll just very quickly just give you the highlight of the week that was, so that there's an appreciation of the kind of progress that we are making on a real-time basis, and real-time in this instance with a delay of about 3 days, because I report until the Friday of the previous week. I'm happy to indicate that the Unit 2 that was damaged partly by fire, and I did indicate that really is the control and instrumentation components at the Grootfontein is back online, and I really want to commend the head of generation, Mr. Numalo, and the general manager, the Tsepiso at Grootfontein, and the team for retaining the unit as promised. And I did indicate that it is important that when we make a public pronouncement in relation to the speed with which we are going to retain the units on stream, that indeed we keep to that promise. And in that way, we are going to reduce that one measure of our performance called the outage slip. So just to congratulate the team for the work that they've done. So just on the previous week, the average you can see is about 29,277. I think it's an excellent performance. You can see that they were still averaging about 60% of the EAF. Of course, the week before, we did see some degree of reduction in terms of the capacity available, but the team has done everything possible to make sure that we're able to lift it to the levels that are desired. And again, on the issues around the planned outages, we're sitting at around 2,888, and you can see that it's about 300 megawatts on top of what we had promised as part of our winter outlook. And this is made possible, like I said before, by the fact that we're improving on the available capacity, and as we improve the available capacity, then we're able to do what I refer to as good maintenance. And of course, the other area that has contributed to capacity available over the past week is the unplanned capacity loss factor. Again, the rate at which these units are failing, the unreliability of these units. Were trying everything possible to make sure that we have them under control. Again, this has to be understood within the context of what was the winter outlook, and in terms of the worst case scenario, we had said that the UCLF will be about 18,000 megawatts, and then in the past week we about 15,871 megawatts. It's an area of work that is receiving dedicated attention at ESCOM. The lower we're able to keep this number down, the better the available capacity, and then the greater the opportunity for us to be able to do planned maintenance. And again, on the issues of the partial load losses, it's an area that still requires additional attention. Where we want to bring it lower than the 6,467 that we have experienced in the past past week rather. We really want to take it lower to just sub 5,000 megawatts. Again, you can see work in progress. We are doing everything possible to address that. Of course, the past week we also had the cold spell. It averaged about 30,633 megawatts, and of course we're able to maintain a combination of stage 1, stage 3 for most part of the week, and that is largely in part as a result of the work that we are doing to make the capacity available, to bring down the degree and the rate at which these units are failing, and of course just toning down a bit on planned outages so that we have a maximum amount of generation capacity available to deal with the peak demand that we have experienced. Again, just to congratulate the team on that. Of course, it's still not sufficient. We want to go to a space where, of course, we keeping to significantly lower levels of load shedding intensity during the peak. Most of what has been, I think the team has done relatively well. Again, the area that still requires more attention is the outage slips. Again, the outage slips means that we make the promise to return the units on a particular date, and we fail to meet our own promise. A function of planning, the team is doing everything possible to improve that area. Much early, around May, April, this number was sitting at about 2,900 megawatts. So now, the past week, we're at about 2,045. But I think there was a period in June in particular where this figure was at about 1,380. So it does show that we do have the capacity, the know-how to bring it down. And as we bring it down, those megawatts will get to be accounted for in the available capacity, and then we're able to reduce the intensity of load shedding. I did make the point previously that what we are trying to do is to ensure that we measure our performance over a period of time. If you like a longitudinal study, the baseline that we are using is the May period, so that we have an appreciation of whether we are able to sustain this performance. Just me giving you a weekly update is not sufficient. The context of what was the baseline, and over a period of time, what is the kind of the trend line that we're beginning to see. And for me, this is a more telling picture. A telling picture because it does communicate whether the actions that we are introducing are beginning to give us the kind of results that are desired over a period of time, whether we're introducing of reliability, resilience in the system. And of course, I do accept that there's a degree of impatience, but for us, the best measure of our performance is how we are able to maintain the available capacity over a period of time. Of course, it will be eaten by the demand, peak demand during winter period, or it can relent the demand, and therefore the total picture is better than what we are experiencing today. So you can see now that in relation to what has been the case, we are in relation to the baseline. I think the first measure there that we were checking is around the available capacity. And when we started this work, we're sitting at about 27,000 megawatts. And now, to you, we are sitting at about 29,200 megawatts. So what has been the change over that a period of about 8 weeks is that we've been able to add 2,000 megawatts. Of course, in the parlance of how we measure the intensity of load shedding, that equates to about 2 stages of load shedding. And then the other measure that is important is on the unplanned capacity loss factor. Again, when we started in May, this number was hovering at about 17,000 megawatts, just above 17,000 megawatts. And then you can see now that we are about averaging about 15,000 megawatts. Of course, June was an exceptionally good period because we're at low scales of 15,000 megawatts. And the point I'm making there is that first is we're addressing the reliability or the unreliability of these units. We have reached a excellent performance in the context of that we are measuring. That was the June period, and we want to surpass that period now in July. And this talks to the reliability of the intervention that we're making, and that we can build some degree of confidence in the work that we are doing. And then the other one, the area of measure is around the planned outages, and this is important. You can see that when we look at the baseline figure, we're very desperate in July, in May rather. We're desperate. We kept this unit running, and in some instances, we're not observing planned maintenance because we really wanted to extract as many megawatts as possible because of at the time, the energy availability factor was significantly lower than the 60% average that we've been experiencing in the June period and the early days of July. So we did everything possible to keep these units running. And as a result, you can see that the planned outages were down. But as a result of improved performance of these units, this gives us a window for us to do what we call opportunity maintenance. And we can see that we ramped it up to about 3,400 megawatts in the period of June. And now we are at about 2,858 now in July, the early part of July. And I'm very confident that as we continue to see this improvement, you'll see that we're going to use that opportunity to ensure that we build resilience in these units and we're able to add megawatts in relation to the units that, or take out the megawatts for planned maintenance, so that as we return them, because once we return them, we've done the kind of work that is required, the intensity of the work that is required, then we're able to undermine the unplanned capacity loss factor, because we'll be having some degree of confidence in relation to the work that we have done, and we can place confidence on the units and undermine them creeping from time to time, and this allows us an opportunity to have a firm control of the grid, and we're not at the mercy of the units that fail from time to time. And then the other measure that we are attending to again is the partial load losses. I did indicate the partial load losses is that they were not able to maximize or optimize the installed design capacity of this unit. You can see at the period of May, the partial load losses were sitting at about 6,700 megawatts. To about 600 megawatts, and now we're at about 6,400 megawatts. Of course, it's just 1 week in the period of August, really. I guess that we will be able to see a much better trend line once we go deeper into the month. But the point is that we're bringing this down. So this is a positive measure. When it comes down, it means that the units are approximating their design capacity. And then the other area that is, of course, of interest is a area around the peak demand. Of course, May we had, as an average, there was a significant peak at about 31,000 megawatts. And of course, when you have that significant amount of peak and acute underperformance, like I've indicated, as a result of the partial load losses, as a result of the unplanned capacity loss factor, it means that the energy available in the grid during May was significantly lower than is the case, and the average demand was higher, and that's why there was an intense stages of load shedding were sustained stage 6 load shedding for a significant period of the time of May. And of course, you can see that that demand has come down, but it's coupled with better performance on the available capacity as a result of us bringing down the unplanned capacity loss factor, bringing down the issues of the partial load losses. And that's why you are seeing, if you like, a reduction in the intensity of load shedding. And we really want to end so that we're able to go into that permutation of zero and some a degree of load shedding in the evening, and of course gradually bring it down over a period of time as we improve the performance of the units that are running and as we return the other units. And I'll indicate the work that we are doing in this regard. And then I thought that we thought that it will be important for us to take you through the work that we have done over the past 12 months. I think this is important because I think we must engender in the discourse the need for us to be transparent, the need for us to be accountable. It's one thing for the president to unveil the energy action plan. It's quite another to report against the targets of the energy action plan. And we really want to normalize this kind of exercise to ensure that we remain not met our targets. And then we go further to say what are the kinds of things that we are taking to mitigate against deterioration of that performance, and or how we return the performance to be on track in relation to the targets that we have set ourselves. And many of the areas that I'll be reflecting here really, I've spoken about them ad nauseum before. So to the extent that I've spoken about them, really, I will not repeat them. I'll just at a very high level, just indicate what we're doing. Of course, in terms of the institutional arrangement, the ministry was introduced and supported by a team of able men and women, technically astute in the energy space, across the value chain of the energy space. And of course, we are drawing also expertise from the private sector, and this body in government is called NICOM, and that's what really underpins the work that we are doing. And of course, there's a collaborative effort that we are doing with Eskom as a dominant player, both on the generation side, a monopoly on the transmission side, and a dominant player on the distribution side. So we're pulling all of these players together to ensure that the effort is an all South Africa effort. And of course, I'll share with you some of the contribution that the private sector has made. So we thought that just at a high level to say to you that about 56% of the work that we are doing is either completed or on track. And for us, that's a big positive. So about 8% of these actions that the president has set out in the energy action plan, we have completed those actions. And some of them, I'll get to reflect on them very briefly. 20 of these actions are on track. So essentially what that means is that we are in keeping with the timelines that we had set for ourselves, the timelines that we had made public, so we remain on track. We are really not worried. If anything, would want to deliver much earlier than promised, but the measure is around what was the initial timelines that were set for ourselves and how are we doing against those timelines.